Have you ever felt a connection so profound with someone that it transcended all logical explanation? A meeting that felt like a recognition rather than an introduction? Science can explain chemical attraction. Psychology can decode compatibility, but there exists a realm of connection so mysterious that it has captivated humanity across millennia, the inexplicable bond between destined souls. Imagine meeting a stranger's eyes across a crowded room and feeling the world shift beneath your feet, not with the fleeting excitement of attraction, but with the profound gravity of remembrance. "I know you," whispers something ancient within you, though you've never met before. This isn't just romantic fantasy. It represents one of the deepest mysteries of human experience that even modern psychology struggles to fully explain. Carl Jung, the revolutionary Swiss psychiatrist who ventured into the uncharted territories of the unconscious mind, developed a framework that might finally help us understand these profound connections. Unlike other psychological theories that dismiss such experiences as mere fantasy or projection, Jung's analytical psychology embraces them as manifestations of something far more profound, the collective unconscious working through archetypes to guide two souls toward mutual transformation. In the following exploration, we'll dive into the depths of Jung's understanding of destined connections, not as perfect fairy tales, but as catalysts for the most important psychological journey of our lives, individuation. We'll discover why these soul connections feel so familiar yet challenging, why they often involve cycles of separation and return, and most importantly, why they possess a quality of inevitability that defies conventional understanding. If you've ever experienced a connection that seemed to transcend time itself, or if you're still waiting to find that inexplicable recognition, this journey through the symbolic landscape of the psyche will forever change how you understand the deepest bonds between souls. Part 1. The unconscious recognition between destined souls. At the core of Jung's understanding of profound soul connections lies his concept of the anima and animus, the unconscious feminine aspect within men and the masculine aspect within women. These inner counterparts aren't merely abstract concepts. They actively shape our perceptions, attractions, and deepest connections. When we encounter someone who profoundly reflects our anima or animus, who embodies qualities that resonate with our unconscious inner image, we experience what Jung called recognition. This isn't merely finding someone attractive or compatible, it's experiencing a numinous quality to the connection, as if something sacred and ancient is being activated. The initial meeting between destined souls often carries a dreamlike quality. Time seems to slow or stop entirely. The external world fades as something unprecedented awakens within. This isn't mere infatuation, it's the collective unconscious stirring to life through the bridge of two individuals. Jung observed that these connections function like a key fitting into a lock, unlocking aspects of ourselves previously inaccessible to conscious awareness. The other person seems to know us in ways that defy explanation, often understanding parts of ourselves we haven't yet recognized. This uncanny understanding creates an almost telepathic bond, reinforcing the sense that the connection is meant to be. Destined soul connections activate what Jung identified as the archetype of the divine couple, a primordial image embedded in humanity's collective unconscious. This archetype appears across cultures and throughout history: Shiva and Shakti, Osiris and Isis, Eros and Psyche. It represents the ultimate union of complementary forces, a symbol of psychological wholeness. When this archetype becomes constellated between two people, they experience their connection as part of something larger than themselves, a cosmic drama being played out through their individual lives. This explains why destined connections often feel fated or inevitable, carrying a weight of significance that ordinary relationships don't possess. The archetypal nature of these connections explains their overwhelming intensity. The individuals aren't just relating as two separate people but as carriers of primordial images that have shaped human understanding of love and connection since the dawn of consciousness. This activation of the collective unconscious lends these connections their numinous, almost spiritual quality. However, Jung warned against mistaking the activation of this archetype for the completion of individuation. The divine couple represents a potential, a symbolic map for integration, not an endpoint. The real work begins after recognition, when the initial enchantment gives way to the challenging path of conscious relationship. Part 2. Projection and shadow work in destined connections. The intensity of destined connections isn't only due to recognition but also to the power of projection. Jung defined projection as the unconscious process of attributing our own unacknowledged qualities, desires, wounds, and potentials onto another person. While all relationships involve projection, destined connections magnify this process exponentially. In these profound connections, we don't merely project surface-level desires or fears, we project aspects of our very essence, parts of ourselves so deeply buried within the unconscious that we've never accessed them directly. The other person becomes a living vessel for these projections, explaining the sense that they complete us in some fundamental way. This shadow work explains why destined connections feel simultaneously healing and wounding. The other person seems to instinctively know exactly where our wounds lie, not to harm us, but because their unconscious recognizes what in us needs healing. This phenomenon creates the paradoxical experience of feeling both perfectly understood and painfully exposed. Part 3. Individuation through connection. For Jung, the ultimate goal of psychological development is individuation, the process of becoming one's true, whole self by integrating conscious and unconscious aspects of the psyche. Destined connections serve as powerful catalysts for this process, often accelerating it beyond what would be possible in isolation. The individuation process requires a delicate dance between the ego, our conscious identity, and the self, the organizing center of the entire psyche, conscious and unconscious. The ego, concerned with control and predictability, resists the transformative pull of the self, which seeks wholeness even at the cost of stability. Destined connections create a unique triangle between two egos and their respective selves. The connection between the selves, operating at the unconscious level, exerts pressure on the egos to expand beyond their comfortable limitations. This pressure explains the sense of being pulled toward the other person despite logical reasons to maintain distance. As the relationship deepens, each person serves as a bridge between the other's ego and self. Through intimate connection, we gain access to unconscious material that would otherwise remain inaccessible. The other person, through their acceptance, challenges, and reflections, helps us reconcile aspects of ourselves that have remained fragmented or rejected. This bridging function explains why separating from a destined connection feels like losing part of ourselves, because, symbolically, we are. The other person has become integral to our individuation process, holding and reflecting parts of our psyche that haven't yet been fully integrated. Jung was deeply influenced by alchemical symbolism, seeing in its imagery a symbolic representation of psychological transformation. He applied this understanding to profound connections, noting how they follow alchemical stages: initial conjunction, dissolution, separation, and ultimately, coagulation. The alchemical understanding of destined connections reveals why they often require periods of separation. Just as alchemical substances must be heated, cooled, separated, and recombined to achieve transformation, souls in profound connection often need to separate to integrate what has been activated between them. During separation, the intense projections and emotional reactivity have space to settle. Each person can digest and integrate the psychological material that has been stirred up, allowing for greater differentiation and authenticity. Without this integration, reunion would simply recreate the same unconscious patterns. The pain of separation serves a crucial alchemical function. It creates the necessary heat for transformation. The suffering experienced in separation isn't meaningless. It's part of the breaking down of old structures to allow new ones to form. This explains why, after periods of separation, destined connections often resume at a higher level of consciousness and authenticity. The alchemical perspective illuminates why destined connections cannot be forced, rushed, or manipulated. Like the alchemist's work, the transformation of souls has its own timing, its own mysterious unfolding that resists the ego's demands for immediate resolution or completion. Part 4. The collective unconscious and eternal love. The most mysterious aspect of destined connections is their quality of timelessness, the sense that the connection has always existed and will always exist, regardless of the physical circumstances. Jung explained this through his concept of the collective unconscious, the deepest layer of the psyche that connects all humanity across time and space. Within the collective unconscious reside not only universal archetypes but also what Jung called ancestral memories, psychological patterns carried forward through generations. When two people experience a destined connection, they may be activating not just their personal unconscious material but ancestral patterns seeking resolution or expression. This ancestral dimension explains why destined connections often feel like remembering rather than discovering, as if the souls recognize each other from a shared past. While Jung didn't necessarily endorse literal reincarnation, he acknowledged that the unconscious experiences time differently than consciousness does, creating these powerful sensations of timeless connection. The collective dimension also explains why destined connections often involve synchronicities, meaningful coincidences that defy statistical probability. Jung observed that when the collective unconscious is activated, the boundary between psyche and matter becomes more permeable, allowing inner psychological realities to manifest in outer events. Two destined souls might find themselves brought together through seemingly impossible coincidences or meeting against all odds. At the deepest level, destined connections serve as vessels for what Jung called the sacred marriage or hieros gamos, the ultimate union of opposites required for psychological wholeness. This isn't merely the union of masculine and feminine but the reconciliation of all psychological polarities, conscious/unconscious, light/shadow, spirit/matter, vulnerability/strength. This sacred marriage isn't achieved once and permanently but represents an ongoing process of balancing and integrating opposites. Destined connections provide a living container for this integration, as each person embodies qualities that the other is learning to incorporate. The sacred marriage explains why destined connections feel spiritually significant even to those who aren't religiously inclined. They activate our innate understanding of wholeness and completion, what religions have symbolized through divine unions and what alchemy sought through the combination of opposing elements. When two souls navigate the challenging path of conscious relationship, facing projections, integrating shadows, and surviving separations, they create a third entity between them, the relationship itself, which becomes greater than the sum of its parts. This relationship as entity carries transformative potential not just for the individuals involved but radiates outward, affecting families, communities, and potentially the collective consciousness itself. Unlike romanticized notions that destined souls complete each other, Jung's psychology reveals a more profound truth. Destined connections don't complete us, they reveal our completeness to ourselves. Through the mirror of intimate connection, we discover parts of ourselves that have remained hidden, allowing us to become more whole, more authentically who we are meant to be. The most powerful lesson from Jung's understanding of destined connections is that their purpose transcends personal happiness. These connections exist to serve the evolution of consciousness, both individual and collective. They create bridges between conscious and unconscious, personal and collective, temporal and eternal. When we approach destined connections with this understanding, not as sources of perpetual bliss but as catalysts for profound transformation, we can navigate their intense challenges with greater wisdom and purpose. We can understand that the pain these connections sometimes cause isn't meaningless but purposeful, not destructive but creative. Perhaps the most beautiful aspect of destined connections is that, once established at the soul level, they cannot be permanently severed. They may undergo periods of physical separation, communication gaps, or emotional distance, but the unconscious bridge remains. This explains why, after years or even decades apart, destined souls can reconnect and immediately access the profound depth that always existed between them. In the end, what keeps destined souls connected isn't perfect compatibility, shared interests, or even mutual desire. It's their service to each other's individuation, their willingness to face both the light and shadow within themselves and each other, and their courage to participate in the mysterious unfolding of consciousness through intimate connection. If you've experienced such a connection, or sense it waiting on your path, remember that its purpose extends far beyond conventional notions of romance or partnership. It exists to awaken you to yourself, to transform you through love's most challenging alchemy, and to connect you to something greater than yourself, the timeless dance of souls finding their way home to wholeness. Thank you so much for staying with me through this exploration. If you found value in today's discussion, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share this video with someone who might benefit from it.